I tēnei pō, ki tō tātou Wānanga nei, Blockchain Navigators, i te taho tēnei hautipua, Kereama Taepa. Engari mui te timata e tangi ana, e mihi ana, kia rātou kua mene atu ki tū o te ārai, e whakaaro ana ki a koe e pāpā e moana, tako tō mai rā i tō moenga roa, kua mihi a koe e te tini ngero, kua mihi a koe e o iwi, e te tini tāngata e aroha nui ana ki a koe. No reira, moi mai rā, koe i tū hei pau toko manawa mo tātou te iwi Māori. No reira, ka tōtō mai i o mātauranga, i o whakakoranga ki roto ki tēnei Wānanga, kia Māori te whakaaro, kia tuturu te whakaaro. Koutou te hunga wairua kia koutou. Ka huri mai kia tātou. Mihi ana kia koe tuakana, Kereama. It's awesome, and I've been excited as for this wānanga. It's awesome to have you in this space. You know, like looking into this blockchain space, into NFTs, into crypto, into the blockchain, the metaverse, and also kind of bringing the art whakaaro as well. It's been really cool to look around and see actually there's actually quite a few Māori in this space that are not only just dipping our feet, but actually, you know, really leading the way, or, you know, have done some quite deep dives. And that's one of the things that I was excited to do with you, is do some deep dives, because I know, like, you've been doing lots of research, you've been teaching in the arts and the digital art space, and you've been looking into the blockchain space for a long time. We had a little catch up before this, and the wānanga that we started having instantly was pretty mean. So I'm really looking forward to tonight, bro. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, bro, me nice to be here. Thanks for the invite. I'm keen, bro. Let's go.
All right. So for those of you that don't know Kereama, firstly, he's an epic artist in his own right, visual, digital, and Whakapī, which we'll get into later. But as well as that, he's been teaching in the art space, in the Māori art space, and looking around things like IP, like your cultural identity within art, looking at like what are the messages that we're talking about with our art, and just living in the art world in general. And, you know, there's a couple of art worlds, and we'll get into that. But bro, if you're up for it, bro, give us a little bit of a background about, you know, ko wai koe no here, and like what was your kind of journey that got you into where you are now. Shout out to Honui for joining us too.
Cheer brother. So I hail from Te Arawa and Tātai Waehere. What else? Studied at Massey and Palmy under Bob Yankee, Kuratira Waruriwiri, Shane Cotton. So sort of went the academic route. But before that, my dad's an artist, Wee Taepa. He's one of the founding members of Kaihanga Uku, so the Māori ceramics ropu. My brother's an artist. He's been kicking it for, you know, decades, and he's been lecturing and now in a higher position up at Massey. And then, going right back to when we were just little as fellas, we'd spend time with my mum's mum, and we'd go over to Wairarapa for the holidays. You know, mum would drop us over there to get us out of her hair.
Some nan time.
Yeah. So, and we just did lots of drawing and lots of painting. So, I suppose before I even got to art school, I was already, you know, in art. So it's sort of been interesting, you know, going to university and learning, you know, not only the art world, or you know, multiple aspects of art, but also Te Ao Māori. So my background is that I've always identified as being Māori, but, you know, pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, green
know
eye,
that story.
hazel eyes, yeah. So it's sort of one of those, you know, those upbringings of living in urban areas, and being detached from Te Ao Māori, from marae, from tikanga, from all of that. And then I went to TA boarding school as well, TOTA. So, you know, was exposed to it through there, and then went to Massey, and in essence was a decolonial process in itself, a decolonizing tool. Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey, I think. Yeah, just different, not better or worse or anything, just a different path. Yeah, so yeah, that's sort of where I come from, for the
That's the
last
background.
20. Yeah,
And now you've been teaching for a while though, eh?
yeah,
So that like you've led through as a student, you know, akua nei tēnei ao, and then now you've been a teacher for how many years?
close to 20, nearly hitting 20, nearly hitting
Okay.
2 decades. Yeah, so
You only look 20 years old, me.
I
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
I
what are
started.
you teaching?
Well, I teach the digital art,
Yeah.
but I also teach the business or the professional side as well. So I started teaching at Te Whare Wānanga o Ao Arangi over in Whakapī.
Oh
So
man.
I was you know, Julie Palmer Pengali, Rangi Kipper,
Man.
Dad worked there, Amy Rātina worked there, um, TK Tikawiti, Butch Spock. There's a few of us.
Some big names, eh?
Yeah, there's a few of us big names, and well, they had the big names. I was just a young fella. But then I left there. Well, we all got the chop really. It was 2008. You know, that area where everything took a dive. So we sort of took a dive with that. But then 6 months later, started at Waiariki in Rotorua,
Yeah.
which is now Toiho Mai
Yeah.
Institute of Technology, and been there, going on about 12, 13 years, 14 years, somewhere around there.
Well, good.
And so teaching lots of digital art, lots of Photoshop, Illustrator, you know, 3D stuff, moving image stuff, heaps of digital things, building websites, how to advertise and promote yourself online. So lots of social media,
Yeah.
lots of advertising, promotion, marketing, and just business sort of stuff in general. How to actually set yourself up as a business.
Yeah.
What steps do you need to take to go through in order to do that?
And that's an interesting combination, eh? Because a lot of the time the artist is the artist, and then the business person is the business person. You know,
Yeah.
I know firsthand. I've had to learn how to be the artist and the business person at the same time. So it's pretty cool that you've got both of those sort of pukinga coming in and working together.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's been interesting. Like when I did my undergrad, my wife was majoring in marketing, so that sort of helped.
Oh, wicked.
But I was interested in that side myself anyway.
Yeah.
But while she was learning, I was sort of, looking at her
Taking it
mahi
up.
and
Yeah.
sort of soaking it up. But then after that, just kept growing that knowledge off my own bat. But even lots of the digital stuff was just all self-taught as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, in the qualifications and the art qualifications now, like compared to what they used to be. A lot of the art qualifications now, like if you go into an art degree, there is a business component of that.
Yeah, which is good, eh?
Yeah, which is good. There's always pluses and minuses. Like
You
if
don't want to
you're
make it all about business of art. Hey,
yeah
you want to create
yeah
art for art's sake, but
yeah
as well as that, you want to be able to make a living.
yeah. So I mean, it depends on the student really as to what they want to do. But generally, if they're serious about art, then they go and do a degree because they do want to make a living out of their art. So that sort of goes alongside that. But in the same breath, like, if you've got a fine art degree that focuses just on art, then if you're putting business in there too, then your art, You know, there's
Yeah.
so many
There's going to be
hours.
some
There's
sacrifice or something, eh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's the hardest thing to teach the students too, because they don't want to do it. It's
Nobody
the
wants to
boring
learn
stuff.
about tax. Yeah.
Yay, tax you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's that time of the year at the whānau tax time.
yeah,
Anyway, so that's cool. That's laid down some good threads that we'll come back to, bro. But I think, like we talked about, I think it's good if we start at the start. So mai te oro ko hanganga. And this is something that I've been really excited about, really diving into. We started these sorts of wānanga, these korero with kanapu, and then also with Mr. G, and we'd had little touches in different blockchain navigator yarns, but looking at the atua of the metaverse, of the blockchain, like we engage with our atua here in Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Kiko, Te Ao Wairua, and this is emerging as a Whekehiko, as a new frontier, as a new space, place, environment. And one of the questions I've been really, turning over and really curious about is like, how do we engage, and like, are there atua within the blockchain? If there aren't, do we make some? Do we look at our atua that we have in Te Ao Kiko, and what are the qualities that they have that we can see in the blockchain and kind of pull up? And I know you've done a little bit of a ruku into this sort of kaupapa, bro. So I'm keen to really give it a good go. So how about we start at the start, eh? You want to share
bro.
some of your whakaaro, bro?
Yeah. So I've actually been researching this very thing for the last decade. So close to 10 years ago, I think I started. I did my first augmented reality project, and back then, iPhones were powerful, but they weren't that powerful. So I'm talking about AR through webcam and stuff. So it was basically through web apps that I was doing this. And I put a collection of T-shirts where if you went to a website, it would throw up atua. But I actually went back to the usual cliche tane and rongo and the usual ones, tu mataonga. But that's what got me started thinking about actually, these atua, well, obviously they're awesome, but for Te Ao Mariko, or Te Ao Matihiko, what, who are those atua? What could those atua be?
Just before you dive into there, bro, can you give us a little bit of an idea of Te Ao Mariko versus Te Ao Matihiko?
So Mariko is more like the virtual. So if you're in the metaverse, then you're living virtually. But to me, Te Ao Matihiko is more about, I'm sitting here in the physical and I'm working on my computer, but I'm not existing necessarily in the virtual. So Te Ao Mariko is more about existing in that virtual space, whereas Te Ao Matihiko is about using the tools at hand, i.e. our digits. So mati, fingers, and the digital digit comes from fingers, right? So when we're sort of thinking about Te Ao Matihiko, it's more about how we sort of do things with our tools, whereas Te Ao Mariko, like the universe, it's more about being inside the metaverse. Sorry, it's more about living inside that space. But even the metaverse, it's Sandbox, Decentraland, all of those ones.
Other side,
yeah. So there's actually, it goes back even like quite a while ago, because around that time there was this app called Second Life, this web app. So if you're familiar with Second Life, it literally is Decentraland. They had their own currency. There was even a woman, I think, from Japan. So we're talking over a decade now, that a real estate agent in real life started her Second Life as a real estate agent, sold digital real estate within Second Life, and became a millionaire. The first person to do it.
10 years ago too.
We are talking about 10 years ago, and that wasn't through crypto or anything. That was through purchasing Second Life currency, selling that, growing that, and then converting it back into real world currency. Yeah. So anyway,
It's
going
massive.
back to the difference, checkmate. So yeah, just the difference. It's Matihiko is more about your fingers and that portal, staying in the real world, but Mariko is more about in the actual metaverse, cruising around and yeah.
Working.
Yeah.
So
So
back to the atua.
yeah. So back to the atua. Sort of, I was sort of thinking about who would be the atua, the atua matua, who would be the most prominent, and then digging around, it sort of came to Uira. So for me, it's he is the atua matua of all digital technologies, and to be honest, even all electronic technologies. So even things like angle grinders and saws and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because without that electrical current, none of those things work.
Yeah. So essentially, he's the one that brings them alive.
Yep. Yeah. So he's the one that gives the whole life. But I'm also mindful too that it's a physical physical manifestation. It's from the natural and the real world. But it still runs. It still runs this virtual world. Still runs Te Ao Mariko.
And there's Whekehiko as well that recently we were talking about with Che and Hana and them and the Ariki crew, Ariki Creative. They just put out a beautiful puka puka. It's awesome. Go and check it out. Ariki Creative, Whekehiko. And that also talks about the whakapapa of Whekehiko, coming down and then being this atua wahine in this space. So yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. So thinking about that forms the basis of this digital world. But then I know you looked a little bit deeper.
Yeah. So dug deeper. Had a look at if there's that nervous laugh, bro. So had a look at what are some of the main or distinguishing characteristics of Te Ao Matihiko and Te Ao Mariko. For me, one of the main ones is Tāne Mahuta, and reason being, and it's a little bit going back. So if you go to our education sort of websites, the government ones, they a lot of people use Maui as an atua for those spaces in terms of innovation. However, for me, it was Tāne who was the innovative one. He was the first innovator.
Different
Reason being,
generations, eh?
yeah. So to me, it was more to do with, and it ties into some other kōrero about innovation in itself in terms of it aligns with the kōrero that you have with the blockchain navigators too, bro, and I've heard you say it again, so over and over again. So because my understanding and my approach was sort of the same too, is that for our tupuna to come here, they came to a new space and a new environment, and they had to innovate and create in order to survive and live. And you can see it in all of our mahi toi. The whakairo, the rāranga, the kōwhaiwhai, if you sort of look at some of those arts, or all of those arts, sorry, there's things here that aren't anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And
they're
that
not
is
things that they brought from Hawaii, eh? When they got here, things changed. Like our whole form of carving, changed.
Yeah. Well, and that's because we responded to the environment that we were in. So when you change that environment, the mahi toi changes with it. You can't.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
So in terms of innovation, that is our tradition. Innovation is tradition. If you're, we have these things that we call tradition. This is traditional Māori art, or however you want to phrase that. but to me, it's it's not this or that. It's like it's whatever we make it, because we have to innovate. So one of the things that I've been really mindful of is that when you think about innovation, and it's almost not quite, but it's almost synonymous with technology.
Yeah.
You change the tech, the mahi changes too. So in terms of Tāne, going back to Tāne, there was a few brothers who were trying to push up, but he innovated. He laid on his back and pushed them up with his feet. So in terms of that creation, it was because of innovation.
Yeah. Innovation that created the light, the space, yeah.
So entering, or not even entering, creating new space is that whole notion. And so when we're thinking about innovation in these new technologies and all of that stuff, then it really is about creating those spaces for us, for our future generations, because we're ancestors just as much as we are, so
descendants.
Descendants. So anyway, Tāne is one of those atua that sort of creates space. But going on that too, there are kōrero out there that once he split the rangi and papa apart, he actually put poles up to hold them apart. So that is a technology. He's using something else in order to do something. So that, to me, in our kōrero, that's sort of like the first example of us,
using technology.
Using technology.
Yeah.
But then also what he did is he, climbed up through the rangi, acquired those baskets, those 3 baskets of knowledge, aronui being one of them. And that is what gives us the opportunity to create as well, as tangata, So he created himself, but he also gave us the opportunity to create.
Yeah, he facilitated that learning, or that unlocking of those skills and talents and stuff within us.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's some other really deep whakaaro around. It's almost like that is, if you think about that kōrero metaphorically, it's like that is the moment in time where we became conscious. So Tāne. Another one is Hine Te Iwa Iwa.
And I can see where you're going straight away.
So once we have the skills in order to create, then we work together to create. So in terms of Hine Te Iwa Iwa, she's the atua of our woven arts. So she sort of brings things together. And when you look at tūrapa or tukutuku, there's a few names for that art form. But if you look at tukutuku, it's based on a pixel grid, which is basically just a TV screen,
Or a pixel grid is based off tukutuku.
Yeah. They stole it off us. Yeah, fully. Yeah. So in terms of a pixel grid, images being made up of pixels, it's the same. It's the same process. It's just blocks, which also relate to the blockchain. It's just blocks of information, red, blue, green, black, whatever colors you want. And then as you add to that block, the information is revealed, the kōrero is revealed, and so it's stored in smaller units. We put those units together in different combinations, and then we've got a whole kōrero, we've got a whole story. But one of the other things that I really like about her is the atua too, is actually going back to the pixels, and it's our screens. So there was a series of work, I didn't really name it this, but I spoke about it a lot in terms of screen culture. And when the smartphones sort of came on the scene, far out, that was it. Now we spend 50% of our time looking at screens. and it's only going to climb. So early TV days, you know, is like 10-15%. There's some actual stats that they've done, and it's only about 10-15 sort of percent around then. But then, when smartphone, like, you know, computers and stuff, it sort of increased. But now with smartphones and smart devices, we pretty much spend half of our day just looking through this portal into the digital space. So in terms of the screen and the pixel grid, again, it's that portal. And then the other aspect to that is, again, you know, Taine gave us the knowledge to create. So the one of the more important links to her is and it actually comes from a French inventor. The first automated machine, so the first machine that could run by itself to create something, was a loom. It's a weaving.
Weaving.
It's a weaving machine.
Yeah.
And how that woven. Oh,
no, I was just saying for those of us that haven't ever seen a loom, I've seen a loom. When I was in Morocco, I saw them using looms to make those beautiful Moroccan rugs. But do you want to just explain what a loom is, how it works?
Yeah, so basically there's lots of you know, there's the aho and the whinu, you know, the string that goes down and across, right?
Yeah.
And then you throw through different colored whinu if you're going across. No, that's the aho. So you're throwing different aho as you're going across, and then that will determine the different colors. So if you want the color to show, you'll come up, and then when you want to make it disappear, it'll sort of go back down again. But what this French inventor did is he actually automated it, and the way he did that was through these cards, and the cards had holes in them, and there's only two possible scenarios. If there's a hole, it'll go through, and if there's no hole, it'll stay there. And if anyone sort of, you know, if any of you listeners out there can sort of cast your mind back to like the 80s, if you've seen this on TV, I for some reason I just remember it. The really old computers ran on punch cards,
and they were huge, eh?
And they were
like
massive.
Fill up a whole room.
Yeah.
For 1 megabyte.
Yeah. There was like the devices that we carry now, almost like 10 or 20 of those types of, or even more.
Thousands of them.
Thousands of them. But what they did is they borrowed that technology from the loom, and that's how they started communicating with the computers. So
that's the ones and O's, eh?
That's the ones
binary code.
That's the binary
1, 0, or whole, no hole. You know, that sort of thing, eh?
Yeah. So binary code is just ones or zeros, yeses or nos, on or off. And so any digital device, computerized or digital device, works on that. So there's lots of different languages that sit above that and communicate, but at the base level, it's always working on ones and zeros. And it came from the loom.
And it came from Hine Te Iwi.
Yeah.
So on multiple levels, Hine Te Iwi was in here, eh? There's the creative aspect, the creative arts aspect. There's like, as soon as you said her name, I was like, I can see blockchain. You know, this computer here, this computer here. There's the hononga, and then the hononga between all of the other ones. I can see tāniko, you know, tāniko, all of those different threads and stuff like that, and they're all coming together. And when you weave, you're writing stories into it, just like you're writing into the blockchain. You're creating blocks which create the story. So on a few different levels, she's in there quite prominently, eh?
Yeah. So she's definitely, she's definitely in there, big time, I think. But also bigger than you think too. Like, one of the things I was sort of really mindful of is, when you've got a digital experience, it is quite singular. Where's the community? And when I started streaming, boy, was I exposed to community. Like, you know, having a following and all of that stuff is one aspect, but actually experiencing and being a part of a community is way different. And so when I started streaming, I got exposed to Discord, and then boom, it was like, that's it.
Yeah.
And when you think about Hineti where you were, and you think about Tūrapa or Tukutuku specifically, you don't make that by yourself. You're passing
Nah,
to
yeah,
another
the
person on
mahitahi.
the other side. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tuku is to give, tuku is to give. It's because there's another person on the other side giving it back to you.
Oh, tahu man.
Yeah. So it's yeah. So then that's where you bring in the community aspect too of, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it still really is a sort of singular experience. But when you jump into the metaverse, when you're jumping into Second Life or even streaming or jumping into Discord, like I've been in a few of the Beaver chats and listening to that corridor in you know in Discord in the chats is not the chats the you know the
The AMAs and stuff.
yeah
Yeah.
it's just been really cool. It's just been really cool. Heaps of people sharing. You know, when I first started streaming, well, it was actually one of my students. He goes, "Oh, make me a mod." So I made him and another woman who lives in Japan a mod,
Yeah.
and I could see what they were doing, but I had no idea how to do it or what they were doing really.
Yeah.
But they were setting up my Twitch stream, jumping in bots, and yeah, there we go. There's the bro medal, true medal.
Yeah.
So
So
he's
just want to shout out to all the Twitch crew who are jumping into this yarn. It's
yeah,
awesome to connect with you fellas.
Ngamihi the super gang. So medal, he helped me heaps in terms of just I could see what he was doing, but he was just doing all sorts of different stuff, crazy as, and that's it. You know, as Make May Wana just said, the community and supporting one another. So that's it in a nutshell. And to me,
Yeah.
that's Tūturu Māori as.
And it's the same, you know, whakaroana kia hine te iwa when the whānau is sitting down to weave or weaving together, everyone having different roles, you know, e tahi kei te haro, e tahi kei te raranga, kei te whakarite, or
Yeah.
that kind of traditional scene when you think, like, yes, we weave on our own, yes, people weave on their own, but as well as that, there is that communal aspect when you're
Mm.
you know, laying down a kaupapa together.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's cool. So in the blockchain, hine te iwa iwa, and that's choice because, you know, like in a lot of spaces, in a lot of ways, our atua wahine have been deliberately suppressed, you know, through colonization. Those were the
Mm.
first ones to get relegated to the background. You know, we did still get written down stories of Tane and Rongo and Tangaroa and all of them, but all of our hine were quite, you know, it was quite hard to hear about or see them. So it's cool to be able to kind of bring them more to the forefront
Yeah.
in these spaces, because
Mm.
we know, you know, that hine, ngā hine, they're always present. So it's cool to see that thinking, and te rā mahitahi o tāne o hine kei te whakaro ki ngā rua. So I'm thinking about, you know, other atua in that space, rua te pukenga, rua te horahora, rua te wānanga, all of those kind of receptacles of knowledge, different ways that we store knowledge,
Mm.
and kind of like thinking internet and blockchain, you know, if that's rua te pukenga, then when we learn something, we're going to put that knowledge into Rua Te Pukenga, so putting it into the blockchain, putting it on there, holding it for us to be able to reach back to and grab later on, or to be able to share with others.
Mm.
Yeah. Did you come across any other atua in that space, or, you know, that were, you know, coming to the forefront for you in your studies,
Yeah, there's a
your
couple
research?
more. There's a couple more. So another one is Rongo Marairo. And we didn't actually have a korero about him. But it's you know the atua of performing arts. So I've heard some korero or seen some korero about Rongo Marairo, otherwise known as Rongo Matane. So the kumara. atua of the kumara, and the harvested foods.
Cultivated, eh?
The cultivated
So
foods.
all of those things that we kind of put effort into grooming, preparing, planting, harvesting. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so in a broader context, like he's the atua of those types of foods, and then at the time of matariki, that's when all of your harvesting is done and it's full and it's plentiful. So there's lots of feasting, and alongside that feasting, there's lots of performing arts.
Yeah.
And
Tāne rore hinere here coming into the space.
Yeah. So in essence, it's sort of like we go to these spaces to entertain ourselves. To get away from our mahi during the day, from our a-hole bosses if we have them, or what have you.
Hopefully we don't.
Hopefully we don't. My boss is awesome, so I'm cool. Rongo is in there too, in terms of creating content for people to come and watch and see and view and take part of, sometimes even. But then the other one is Maui. Maui does come into this, but I think about Maui in a different way, in a different context, as opposed to technology.
Yeah.
And it's sort of I always thought he was a bit of an egg.
Yeah.
Like as a little boy reading the books that were illustrated by Gossage, I always thought he was a bit of an egg, because why do you want to smash something, and why do you want to just throw things away that belong to your kuia? And I always thought he was cool as well, but I always thought about that other side to him that was like, you're an egg,
Yeah, that duality,
why are you so disrespectful?
Yeah.
So how I relate that to the digital world, or why he's in the mix, is that there's two parts to this, because he was a shapeshifter too.
And metaverse skins, your avatars and stuff like that.
Your skins, your avatars, but they are there for a reason. There's a reason why you don't dox yourself, and they are very, they're very real reasons. And it all has to do with safety. And it's that transitional state between who you are in the real world and who you are in the digital world. And Maui was interesting, because he could live in both the spiritual or the atua world as well as our own. He was human. He was born human, but then he was raised by the atua. So he could traverse. He was given powers. He could shapeshift. And there's one corridor where he literally takes his wahine's face and puts it on his own. I don't know why. I still need to do some digging in. But in terms of, avatars and all of that stuff, and securing your identity to keep you safe from the bad side, the good side and the bad side, then that's sort of what I'm thinking about with Maui.
Cool. There's a different lens on the May than we usually get. Like I always get the tutu and the innovative, but also just like, how does that work? How does that work? How does that work? What happens if you do this? Like that sort of thing. But I also think like it's a real good, reminder for us to really examine those stories, to really look into those stories. One of my tuakana, Antonio Te Maioha, he did a really a beautiful kind of rendition, or like he did heaps of rangahau, and then he wrote a beautiful rendition of Maui Mahuika story. So the short story, the short Reader's Digest version that we know is Mahuika, he wahine, he tohunga. She was over there, separated from the village. Everyone was kind of scared of her. Maui went over, asked for her fingernail. First, he put out all the fires. Then he asked for her fingernails. And then he decided to extinguish all of them bar one. and then she got angry, threw it at him, missed him apparently, and then it went into a tree, and then that's how we got those trees to hikahi. That's how we could make fire. That's the generally known story, but yeah, the bro Antonio, he was like, well, first of all, I don't reckon Mahuika was that stupid. And I really agree with him. So he was saying, if you were Tamanui Te Rā, would you send your son down to marry an idiot? Like, you're an atua, you wouldn't send your son down to marry an idiot, and then from them came the fire. So that's the first thing. Second thing, if she was charged with looking after the fire, this ahi, this tool that keeps us all alive and warm and means we can cook, means we can do all these things. Again, you wouldn't have an idiot in charge of that, would you? Like, that's the survival of your people. You wouldn't have an idiot in charge. She's living off to the side, away from the people. Often our tohunga were, ko atutahi te whetū tārake i te rangi. The tohunga were set apart, and it wasn't because they were outcast. It's because they were so tapu in the knowledge and the things that they did. It needed to be looked after, and it needed to be not in the middle of all our noa, mahinga kai and all of that sort of stuff. So, that's there. And then the kicker for me was like, everyone thinks that Maui was tricking her, but what happens if she was testing him? She was testing him to see if he was responsible enough to take care of this thing, this thing called fire. Whether he was onto it enough to look after this thing called fire. And actually, he failed the test 19 times. He messed up. He screwed up. And maybe she was always going to put it into the rako, because the rako of Tāne, they're dependable. They're reliable. They're always going to be here. They exist and they breathe life, for us, in all of our connections and stuff like that. So even just like looking at that story, that one story a little bit differently, can give us a different lens on things. And I really invite people not to just look at our stories with one, face value, especially because most of them, through colonization and stuff, most of them were written down by Pākehā missionaries, even, so they're looking at it through the Christian point of view, on top of being Pākehā and male. So, like, it's a real interesting thing. So I think I really like that look at Maui as, and he was on that line, and it could be, he could also be the atua of scams. Yeah, he could. Rug pulls and things like that, because he did things in a not always straight up and down way. Like that's something for us to think about, I reckon, and that's cool. So
hence the beware of the Maui who changes face and shapeshifts. Because you don't know.
And I think that's a big thing, and we've mentioned it a couple of times before, is that, so that process of doxing, revealing your identity and stuff, and then how do we, in our metaverse space, in that space, how do we use our tikanga to be able to keep ourselves and each other safe? And so it might be that process of a pōhiri, might be doxing, Maui, turn back into Maui again, stop being the kereru or the, whatever you are in this particular form, so I can see who you are, so I know I can trust you, real world wise. But that's real cool. Were there any other like things around Maui that came up for you, bro, in your research?
No, just those ones, bro. Just that context, really, just that concept. But again, it's all of our reo was metaphorical. You can't take it at face value. You sort of got to look behind and off to the side and under and on top, and you got to look at it from all different angles. Don't just read what's in front of you. Think a little bit deeper, think a little bit further, push through what's in front of you.
And I think that's a good segue into like the art, bro. Like we can make art because it looks nice, but what about the story? What about what does it mean? What are you commenting on? That's something that I know you're quite passionate about quite strong. And should we roll into that kōrero?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, in essence, my mahi itself for the last 10 years has been this, has been, you know, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
The digital universe is well, it's already here. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do? How are we going to set ourselves up? There was a bronze sculpture that I did over in Taranaki in the city there, and it's a pixelated tiki. So heaps of people sort of jumped on social media and, oh, it's a square poo. I don't know where that comes from. And then one of them was like, oh man, Minecraft, you know, lawsuit waiting to happen, appropriation, rah rah rah.
Yeah.
But I named it Tiki, Tichi, and it's pixelated. So if you spell the word Tech, you come up with tech. So you still pronounce it Tiki, and it's a Tiki form, but it's pixelated, or voxelated. It's a 3-dimensional pixels. So it's this big, massive 2.5 meter bronze. But through that mahi, I'm literally talking about technology, the old and the new, and how we're going to shift, how we're going to migrate from a Māori lens, like how do we navigate this space? And so pretty much all of my mahi for the last 10 years has been about either colonization, identity, appropriation, and stealing, cultural misappropriation, but also about how are we going to prepare ourselves for the coming digital space. When I started doing augmented reality, I did this interview with it was sort of like a staff sort of newspaper.
Yeah.
So this woman was interviewing me, and she was like, "Oh, so how come you're doing this?" And I said, "Look, in 10 years, this technology is going to be everywhere." Sure enough, 10
Pokemon
years later,
Go, bro.
Pokemon Go, Instagram,
that was the
filters,
all the filters and stuff. But Pokemon Go, in terms of AR, like that was the first big thing that just really, you know, everyone was doing.
Yeah. Well, that blew it up in a entertainment way.
Yeah.
Like AR was actually really big before that in terms of navigation systems.
Oh yeah, true. Heads up displays and shit.
Yeah, so you'd have a heads up, and then it'd sort of list, you know, this is where this place is, and this is sort of star ratings and all of that. So that was around a long time before that. But Pokemon sort of bring it into the real entertainment and the mainstream industry because they gamified it. You gamify something, boom, it's
Can you just explain gamify? Because it's quite an important concept, I think, not only in you know, in the blockchain conversation or like metaverse conversation, but also in the marketing conversation. It's quite a tool that people use. Can you give people an idea of like what that means?
Basically, if you turn anything into a game, then it's gamified. So what that sort of means is that if you have a task that you have to do and you get rewarded for it, i.e. V-Bucks or whatever, then you've gamified that process. So you could gamify education, you know, you could gamify learning, you know, give them a treat at the end. You know, how do you spell da da da? And then if they get it right, they get a
star or something.
Get a star, or so it's a well-known and well-used strategy for all sorts of different things. It is really good for learning, but it's also good from a marketing perspective. Like at the end of the day, we can you know, jump into Facebook for free. We can download Fortnite for free. Apple, when all of those game apps came onto the Apple marketplace, they were quite expensive, but then they sort of dropped down to 99 cents, and then all of a sudden they were all free, all of them. And it was what they were trying to do is that they were trying to entice people on to their games, and then they sort of made their money through advertising and stuff. But
it's the in-game. Or and the in-game purchases or in-app purchases. So like those photo editing software, you can have it for free, but you can only do 2 filters. You know, if you want the 3rd filter, you gotta pay for it and stuff like that.
So essentially, all gamification means is that it's about achieving a task. Just like in most games, you got to achieve a task. As soon as you sort of reach a certain milestone, you're rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So there goes the dopamine hit, boom, and then you're hooked.
And that's down to the sounds and the colors and those sorts of things as well, eh?
Yeah, we're talking about communicating on so many different levels. Visual, audio, Yeah.
And those are the things that, when we're on social media, when we get a like, a little heart pops up, or
Dopamine.
you get a dopamine hit, you get a feel good dopamine, just feel good vibes,
and you come back for more.
And that makes us, and that's part of that addictive quality as well, eh? Because we're kind of fiending for that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps us rolling back.
Yeah. Give me the likes.
Yeah. But that's where it's used as a marketing tool, eh?
Yeah. So they gamified basically posting.
Yeah.
There's your task, put up a post. They've rewarded you with likes. The more likes you get, the more hooked you are. You come back on, boom.
And then that even influences the types of posts we do. Because if I post this sort of thing, I'll get 100 likes. If I post this sort of thing, I'll get 10 likes. It's, and it's all subconscious. It's all, you're not even really thinking about it.
No.
But that's, those are real things within this world. And I think that's something I just wanted to pull it up so that we can be aware of it. And same for as an artist, because I could make art that I like, or I could make art that I know is going to get heaps of likes. Like I already know when I post photos, if I post certain photos, I'll get heaps of likes. If I post certain other photos, I won't get heaps of likes. But I don't want to be driven by that. I want to communicate the stories that I want to communicate, and so I just post whatever I want. But it's interesting to notice that. I kind of want to post more of those photos because I get more likes when I do that. That sort of thing. So I just for us to be aware of that stuff, eh?
Yeah. And then so just like what you'll do is you'll see lots of art. And I'm not trying to diss anyone or bag anyone, but there's no kaupapa to it. Like it looks beautiful, it makes you feel good. So it sort of it sort of approaches or communicates you in a visual, just a visual
aesthetic way.
It's a purely aesthetic. And there are rules, there are rules that you follow by. So the rule of thirds, so breaking your picture plane up into thirds, and there's actually a whole massive history that relates back to just that rule of thirds. And so if you look out in nature and you see how trees are broken down, there is sort of like a formula, and you can even hold your finger up. So there's a formula called, there's a number. Sorry, it's called phi. So I think it's a Greek word, and there's a particular number. It's not pi, it's phi, and there's an equation, and you might have heard like the golden number, the golden ratio.
The golden mean.
The golden mean, and this is the equation right here in your finger. So the equation is a plus b equals c. Okay, so this bit plus this bit equals this bit, and you see it in nature all the time. And this ratio is where the rule of thirds comes from. Now, when you're looking at a painting and it makes you feel like good, that it's following those rules. And we feel that goodness because we're used to seeing that in nature. We see it everywhere in the natural world. If it's not following those rules, it makes us feel not right. It makes us feel,
and it is based
going on, strange.
It is a feel thing too, eh?
Yeah, it's a feel thing.
So I didn't study photography. I just learned by being a tutu. And when people ask me, like, how do you do that? Well, why do you do that? No, I do just say, like, I just do it by feel. Like, this feels right if I do it like this, and then if I don't do it like this, it kind of feels, but it just feels off. Like, I can't really explain it. So that would explain it, eh?
Now you can, bro.
To me,
It goes
and this
back
is
to
cool
this.
having that tool. Like, that's something that we can all kind of look at and go, this plus this equals this, and you can, you can see it,
Yeah.
and then you can see it. There's that nautilus shell, that people use as a kind of description, because it is a perfect description of that golden mean, eh?
Yeah, so that the nautilus shell, if you add two of those blocks together, that goes to the next block. And then you add two of those together, and then that goes to the next block. So as it grows, that's where our spiral comes from. That golden,
And do our like kapunga and stuff, do our pito, does that follow that sort of ratio as well?
All spirals follow that sort of same ratio. A lot of our triangles follow a ratio. I can't recall, because our triangles aren't equilateral triangles. They're not equal on all sides. They actually have a taller apex. And I'm pretty sure it's because of that. It's not based on a even. There's sort of like a 1.3 or a 1.23 sort of type number in there. That's what it is. And so all of our mahi sort of follows that, because it's a universal visual language. It's we see it in the trees, we see it in our bodies all the time. We see it everywhere. It's just something in nature that just appears.
And that's why we can have those connections between us and other iwi taketake right across in a different country. Like I remember Morocco, for example, traveling through Morocco, looking at their mahi whatu, their rugs and stuff. I'm seeing tāniko patterns. Like I'm seeing straight up tāniko patterns that look exactly the same as what we've got on the other side of the ocean, on a different continent. And not just in Morocco, but in Peru, I saw the same thing, which is another continent across another ocean, And so if you look at those,
Turtle Island, all of the
all over Turtle Island,
over there. They all have them as well. But I think it's like in relation to the woven arts, it's probably more of a process thing, because you're dealing with blocks, so you won't see a lot of curves. Because when you're dealing with blocks, it's sort of harder to create curves. But it's you're right. It's that that everyone is sort of drawing from that same space, which is our natural world. And we see it all the time.
So you're talking about like some of that art, we like it because it looks good, because it makes us feel good. But I think, really want to drill down into what you were talking about, but what's the message? What is it actually saying? Because you can make something look good and that's cool.
Yeah.
Or you can make something that looks good and has a message.
Yeah. So what we sort of learn at art school is that, yes, there's lots of artwork out there that looks beautiful, but it really doesn't add anything,
Add to what?
Other than make you feel good, it doesn't really add to anything. So what do I mean by that? It sort of means that what we sort of learn to be is critical. Okay, so what we're doing, or what we learn to do, is we learn to see and question. And so when we're being critical, we're being mindful and questioning our world. We're questioning the art world. We're questioning all sorts of different things. And if you look at some of our Māori artists, they're questioning the government, because of our situation. And so for me, it's, when I create my work, it's not just about making something look cool, right? This mahi in behind my back and this mahi on my shirt, like, people might like it. People might think oh yeah, that looks cool. It's Autobots with moko on it, or whai on it. There's a Nike symbol with whakare, high Pakati, some niho in there. So, when they see it, they'll, there's this sort of nostalgia. There's sort of this, aspect of, that's cool as. But what I'm really getting at is not just trying to make cool pictures.
Yeah. You're not just making it because it looks cool.
Yeah. And I'm not just doing it to get the likes. I'm not doing it to follow the trends or anything like that.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm communicating with us as Māori, like certain things, different things. So if you sort of take this Autobots, for example, and you'll see it, in some of the NFTs that I've got, Tohuna, and some of the prints that I did. So there's lots of 2D prints that I did a while back, years back, of Star Wars and all of those types of characters in my childhood growing up.
Yeah.
But there's actually kaupapa behind it, and there's sort of like a couple. So tohuna means to conceal. And at the time I was creating that series, there was lots of raru in the media about tāmoko and about people. Excuse me.
About people, is it the appropriation and kind of using tāmoko all over the place?
Well, there was that korero, but there was also korero about people losing their jobs or couldn't even get jobs.
No, if they had a moko,
yeah,
they
couldn't get jobs and stuff like that. But then also the appropriation angle. So when I do stuff like this, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, there's all of these sort of places that steal our culture. I mean, Paris, France, a fashion war. There is a major fashion label, and then on the garment, it's literally a copy and paste from a Google search of tāmoko, literally copied and pasted on the front of a garment, and it's walking down the fashion
runway in Paris, and then they're going to sell it for heaps.
That the monetary value on that is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Go back to the early 2000s when I was studying Lego, when they created their first Bionicle series.
Yeah.
They were all atua. There was Tāne, there was Rongo, there was two, and they were
making paper off it.
Yeah, well, they sort of started to, but then, nah, man, you ain't doing that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're really good at. For Māori, we're actually really good at policing that, because we see it, and we get on, and we give them heaps of stick.
Yeah, we'll hit them up about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we call them out straight away. But anyway, at that time, there was lots of korero about moko and stuff. So I started creating a series called Tohuna, and the whole idea was to sort of try and talk to people about, it's not just tattoos.
Yeah.
Your moko, especially your mataora, it's about who you are, and that was sort of the funny thing, is that these people who had no idea what it is, and they just take it, they steal it, and they chuck it on something, and then they're fully detached. They have no idea. And what I'm sort of going through the process of is that, yes, these things are really important to us. So understand that, and then don't take it. But what I was sort of getting at, so lots of people have said, oh, you should do this, this character, this character. And I was saying, well, no, it doesn't fit the kaupapa. So what I was talking about, or how I was talking about this, is that I'd always have some sort of mask. If we look at our superheroes in Marvel or DC, they're always masked, so they're always hidden. Apart from Superman, he's the opposite. He just takes off his glasses. But
because his glasses are such a good disguise.
Genius. Yeah. But what I was sort of trying to get at is that, just as much as a mask hides, our mask, in terms of our mataora, actually tells everything about who this person is in front of you. It reveals every single thing: who they are, where they're from, where they sit within their ranking of their hapu or whānau, what they do. It tells everything. So through that series, it's sort of what I was basically trying to do. But also, while I was doing that, I am an appropriation artist at the same time. It's a specific sort of art practice. So I couldn't talk about appropriation without appropriating myself. So I had to sort of steal some stuff in order to do this. But it wasn't anything. I don't steal anything. I steal particular things because it relates specifically to the kaupapa of hiding, revealing, So I'm sort of only looking at masks for the Tohuna series. Tohuna 3.0 is sort of the same, but in a three-dimensional context. So a lot of my 2D stuff, the original Tohuna series was more just sort of flat, moko, but then coming up into the three-dimensional. So that's what the new series is. So that's sort of, again, the kaupapa is I'm adding to this discourse, or I'm adding to the discussion through my artwork. I'm not just creating pretty pictures. I'm actually talking to people about what this artwork's about and what the impacts of this is. And I'm doing it through my artwork as well. What I'm also doing is I'm sort of looking at my own identity as well, and the identity crises that I have on a daily basis. You know, there's been so many times where people have come up and, oh, I'm looking for Kereama, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Kereama, and oh, okay. And it's sort of the same, you know, they were expecting a really dark brown skinned person, you know, black hair, brown eyes, you know, Māori fella. And then they see me, and then they get a surprise that I'm pale skin, blonde hair, hazel eyes. So it's all of these identity things that I sort of have issues that a lot of us have because of, you know, the urban drift, intermarriage, all of that stuff, Māori father, Pākehā mother. So I'm sort of talking about those types of things. So, you know, when I grew up, these were my heroes. These were the people that I sort of looked up to, you know, looking at He-Man and Batman and all of them. But then on a deeper level, again, you know, all of that was a result of colonization and assimilation and all of that stuff. So if you think about the Autobots in particular, what is that kōrero about? You know, it's about an alien race coming into a space, and then it's about another alien race coming into that same space to try and get the resource, which is energon. So there's a really strong correlation between us
colonization
and then someone else coming here and trying to steal our resource. So again, you know, it's not just about making a pretty picture. There's layers, okay, of meaning behind that. And I'm doing it for that reason, is to have those conversations and talk to people about that and share that kōrero, share those mamai if that's what it is, share those thoughts about, you know, culture growing up in the 80s and Autobots and all of that stuff. So that's sort of, you know, in terms of art, you know, sure, if people are cracking it and there's lots of hype around them, that's awesome. But then, you know, what we're sort of what I'm sort of talking about is that, you know, there's the art world and then there's the art world. And when you're sort of creating work that has, you know, more kōrero and more discussion and more criticality behind it, then you're sort of entering into a different space. You're entering into artwork that actually has true meaning. You know, when I look at these PHP projects, like the art to me is almost meaningless. The art itself, the projects, the kaupapa of the project is really awesome. Like, you know, when I look at the beavers, what they're doing in terms of getting
it's incredible,
you know, investing in the community, giving out free, like the only reason I invested in the beavers was because of that. I saw that they were giving opportunity for our tamariki to be creative through music for free. You can't, there's no
beat it,
there's no better kaupapa. So that's why I invested. Is the art cool? Yes, on some levels it is. But to me, you know, it sort of doesn't hit the mark in terms of the kaupapa itself. Like a beaver, what is, you know, where does that come in? And bro, to the kai toi behind the eager beavers, bro, I'm not trying to fucking get to you, bro. It's just, it's, you know, there's a difference between the artwork itself, and bro, if you're there to have a kōrero, man, I'd be keen to kōrero as well.
Yeah, I think like the beaver part, there was a kōrero that I had Riapo, he kind of I hura I tērā. It was that the beaver builds a dam not for itself, but it creates an ecosystem for all of the other animals.
Yeah.
So it's building, and so the whakaro behind the beavers there, but like I can feel you with like all the different attributes. Some of them are cool, like power and stuff like that, but like what relevance does laser eyes have with music or building up artists and stuff like that? Like I can see what you're saying about some of the projects. Sometimes we're creating attributes just to make another attribute, so
to hit the 2,000 mark.
Yeah. Now
or the 8,000 mark or the 2,000 mark. You know, like to me, a lot of the PHP projects that it's just marketing. It's just a marketing tool. It's a marketing tool.
Yeah, or some of them are massive. Pools. They got a cool image, looks cool, and it's a way that heaps of people can buy that cool image, and then they've got a lot of money from the cool image.
But they know how that system works. They know how gamification works. They know how pulling you in and getting that sort of, it's almost like gambling, you know? Building up that hype, and they know how to communicate on levels that aren't just straight visual. There's so much different types of communication going on. And those like what I see is you know, those PHP projects are just that the marketing people. They understand markets, they understand people, they understand motivation, behaviors, psychographics, geographics, all of that type of stuff. And all of those projects do tend to be set up by people from marketing, and then they employ an artist to come in. You know, and some, you know, like that dude in Hamilton, the old Pixel ones, the artist didn't know he was doing an NFT project. He was just doing money for some mate or something. It was,
no, that was a big rip-off,
Yeah. So in terms of that, I'm going to sort of take it a bit, I'll take a step back. In terms of the art world, like, you know, there are some anomalies for sure. Like if you've grown a massive following and all of that stuff, you know, you're going to have a huge hype around you, and your mahi is what it is, whether it has real true kaupapa or not. It's still going to be real awesome, you know, because the culture says so, because the community says so. So you're always going to get that investment. But what I'm sort of want to talk about really is the difference between the art world and the art system. And there's sort of some connections in there, and there's a bit of a process, and it's a long process, and you're in it sort of for the long haul. It's not a make quick buck. It's sort of like a career. It's a life thing. It's a passion thing. It's a lifelong passion thing. And all of us as artists and creatives know what we're sort of talking about here, because, you know, if we don't create, then we, you know, our fingers sort of, we pop. So in terms of the art system, and I'm going to sort of relate it back to NFTs and some other things, but in terms of the art system, essentially what you do is you go to the right art school. So there's different levels of art schools. Then you enter competitions and awards. So there's all sorts of these different competitions and awards. So for all of the artists listening, you know, take some of these sort of tips down, or some of these things down. There's these things called residencies, there's scholarships and awards, but there's these things called residencies, where I went to this residency. It was pretty amazing. Banff, bottom of the Rockies, so over in just out of Toronto, I think, or Alberta, just out of Alberta. For a whole 5 weeks I was there, and all we did was make art. and I didn't pay for a cent. I applied, and they housed me. Put me in a motel. They have one on campus, and then they gave me a studio, and all I had to do was just make up. And it was a indigenous digital art residency. So all of us together were sort of exploring all of these different kaupapa around mahi toi, around indigeneity and the digital space, Te Ao Matihiko and Te Ao Mariko. And so there were people, First Nations people there, and there was a new way, Cora Ellen from Aotearoa, but she was doing all of her tapa and stuff. Hiapo, sorry. Aroha mai, Cora. And yeah, so we all just sort of basically hung out for 5 weeks. Where you exhibit, so you have lots of exhibitions. You have group exhibitions, so you exhibit with groups of people, and you have solo exhibitions. So you have an exhibition space all to yourself, and you got to make lots of work and fill up that whole gallery all by yourself.
Tell your stories.
Yeah, tell your own kaupapa. Then there's, so generally you're sort of exhibiting in galleries, and when you're thinking about galleries, there's sort of different sort of levels of galleries. Yeah. So there's the type of galleries where they're sort of like a shop that's full of art. And so if you ever go into a gallery and you see lots of different artwork from lots of different artists, then that's more like a shop that sells
like
art.
Kura, for example. Kura gallery. Yeah.
Pretty much.
A place where a whole lot of artists can exhibit their work and sell their work kind of on behalf of it.
Yeah. And then as you sort of travel up, there's, I say up, but then you sort of come up into the dealer gallery. So when you're at art school, you're sort of, your goal, if you're that way inclined, if that's what you want to do, you sort of are looking at, what type of dealer gallery would I fit with? And you can always tell a dealer gallery by the way they present their artwork. So if you ever go into a gallery and you see only one person's work in that gallery, and we're talking about a shop space, in town, generally you're only going to find dealer galleries in the main centres, Auckland, Wellington, over in the Tron, Hamilton, there's none here in Tauranga, down in Christchurch, and those types of major cities. If you ever go into a gallery, into sort of like a shop space, and you only see one person's artwork, then that's a dealer gallery. And then that's sort of where you sort of want to build up towards in terms of your art career. You're sort of trying to get into a dealer gallery. Now, what you'll sort of see is that, when you go into those galleries that are sort of more like shops, you'll see prices everywhere. And hopefully you see red dots, because that means you've sold your work.
It's sold, yeah.
Yeah. But when you go into dealer galleries, you sort of don't tend to see prices, because they operate in a different way. And again, this is only just through my experience. So there's heaps of other people who might be watching in and, weigh in with your experiences, but they tend to target a particular audience. And dealer galleries go for the 1%ers. So if you look at the price tags there and you go into a dealer gallery and there is no price tag, well, then that's sort of pretty much the tell right there. You're not spending a couple of $100 for an artwork. You're sort of looking at upwards of, a few thousand, 10,000, 100K sort of type of artworks.
Yeah.
When you sort of travel overseas and start to see some of these other bigger dealer galleries, that you're looking at millions to buy an artwork. And then if you're collected, you're collected by, so if you're represented by a gallery, that's sort of like a milestone as you sort of climb up the ranks throughout your career. And then the role of the dealer gallery is to sort of get you into the right collections. So there's lots of different institutions like museums and public art galleries like Te Papa. You know, they're sort of looking for key moments in time and key moments in history, and they collect those artworks. I've got like about 3 artworks in the Rotorua Museum collection, for example. So they've sort of been tracking my career, and they've been getting sort of key different artworks throughout my career since I've been there. So when you're looking, so as an artist, what you're sort of trying to do is get into the right collections. Now that happens on a public level, but it also happens on a private level. And when people, like, again, these really very rich, wealthy people collect art, what they do is they go to the dealer galleries, and then they talk to them, and then the dealer galleries and the art agents, they're sort of advising these people and the collectors in terms of what to buy. And that's sort of that's basically the ecosystem, and that's sort of how it works. Now after that, then the auction houses come in. So when people sort of get tired of their work in the collection, they'll put it through an auction house, and then they'll chuck it under the hammer in hopes that it'll sell for equal or more value. So when you're thinking about
it's appreciated.
So when you're thinking about art investment, okay, what you're sort of thinking about is you know, putting it through at some stage an auction process in order to sell it at a higher price. That's where your investment comes in. So that's what the secondary market is. Okay, so you have the primary market and then you have the secondary market. So as an artist, you know, when you're going to art school, the whole reason that you want to have layers and have real discussion and real communication through your work, not separate to your work, you know, like, you know, for me,
you want your pieces to have a statement, to be carrying a message, because that's what's going to engage people in the end. It's like, oh, that looks nice, but I'm not really necessarily motivated to buy it unless, oh, that looks nice and it means something to me and it's saying something.
But it's a little bit deeper than that too, and this is purely looking at it from an art career perspective. Is that all of these things that I just explained to you in terms of competitions, residencies, group exhibitions, solo exhibitions, representation, even who writes about you and where that information shows up, it has nothing to do with the artist. It has everything to do with the power people in that system. It has everything to do with the critics, the art critics who write about art, and they write about, you know, good art, whatever they choose to be good at. And then they choose, you know, the curators choose what to exhibit, whether in a group show or a solo show. If you're applying for a residency, it's the person who's running and heading that residency that dictates, is this person have mana? Does this person have value? Are they up to scratch? Are they up to standard? So there's lots of artists out there who are cracking it, in terms of, you know, I'm awesome, my mahi's awesome, but it's only them talking about their mahi. It's not other people in the know, you know, in that scene. And I'm not saying that my work is better or their work is better. I'm just saying that it's a different part. It's a different scene. And what I'm sort of kind of coming back to in terms of NFTs and the blockchain and art and investing is that these are the types of things that you want to look for when you're investing for a long term in terms of art.
And we can apply these to art, physical art, but we can also apply it to like NFT art. And this is kind of differentiating. Or, I mean, it could apply to some of the PFPs, the profile pic ones, you know, when there's 10,000 of it. But generally, we're actually talking more about like your work, my work, Mr. G's work, artists that are creating art and you know, have a message, that sort of thing. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. So what what I'm, the gem in all of this, basically in this part of the corridor, really is about, you keep hearing, well, do your research, do your research, do your research.
Yeah, but what do you research?
Yeah, but you sort of have to know a little bit in order to do you have to know the question in order to start answering the question.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking, or what I want you to think about asking yourself is, who's talking about the work? Is it the artist and just the artist? Or is it all of the curators, all of the art critics, all of the people who write books on Māori art or digital art? Are they in books even? So again, like I can say, oh man, I've got awesome ads art. Who cares? In terms of the art world, I can say that as much as I want, but they're not going to listen to me. Every one of these things, competitions, awards, residencies, writing about exhibitions, especially landmark exhibitions, these really big exhibitions. It's other people saying that this artist, the kaupapa of their work, is important. Okay, it's someone else saying it. And if I look at Toi Tu Toi Ora, it's the last show for Māori art, contemporary Māori art. It was the first show in 20 years. So 20 years ago, that was the last major exhibition that surveyed Māori art. It was in Auckland Art Gallery, a prestigious, what you'd call a prestigious gallery.
Yeah.
It's a public gallery, so it's a gallery that is its sole purpose is to inform and to teach people. But all of the 120 odd artists in that show are important, and for the reason that Nigel Burrell, the curator, he's saying that these people are important for whatever reason. So when you're sort of looking for, especially Māori artists, like that's the book I'd get. There's a book called Toi Tu Toi Ora. It's just come out. It's just dropped.
Yeah, just got to order that.
Yeah, I think it's on Wickles and stuff too. But if you're looking for Māori artists that you want to invest in, then I'd look at that book. And if any of those artists start dropping NFTs, that's what I'd jump on.
Yeah.
Because you're not talking about just the digital space, you're talking about cultural evolution. Okay, so when we sort of, when I'm talking about kaupapa, discourse, the corridor, then there are artists that are making really important statements through their work. Okay, and sort of milestones within the history of Toi Māori. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. What do you look for? You're looking for, I mean, it depends as an investor. Like if you like their art, doesn't matter. Everything
It's
else.
number one name. Like buying, I buy this because I like the way it looks. It makes me feel nice, or it reminds me of something, or it communicates a message that, or evokes a feeling in me, those sorts of things. That's one reason to buy art. And then if you're investing, that's a different thing. And I remember earlier when we were talking, you were mentioning, so for projects like a PFP project, like the Beavers, you look at where are we going? Where is it going to? So with the Beavers, next week we're going to be dropping instruments off. Oh, this week we're dropping instruments off to a couple of kura. They were decided by the community, which is so awesome. But then you look at what's happening after that. The community is going to vote and nominate an artist that will be then mentored by Sons of Zion, Kings, and Stan. And then so we've got a roadmap of where that project is going. What I like is, hey, when you described it to me, you said, for these sorts of projects, you look at where is it going, what's the trajectory, like what are the things in the plans. But when you're looking at an artist, like say Mr. G, who interviewed last week, you look at where he's been.
Yeah.
You know, for the last 18 years, he's been working and creating as an artist. He's got a track record. He's got a history. He's been in the news. He's, you know, like people of Star Wars have reached out to him to create the piece for Uncle Tim, like all of those sorts of things. That kind of tells a story about where he's been. Like when you're looking about where someone's been, is that generally what you're looking at? So you're looking at kind of like have they had residencies, have they had exhibitions, that sort of stuff. But what else? Like, what do you look at?
Well, you look at all of those things, and what you're looking at is, well, essentially, like a lot of, you know, career artists will have a bio on their page, and it sort of lists, you know, a lot of the exhibitions, the residencies, their bibliography. So what books have they appeared in? And so what you want to do is you sort of, in terms of, you know, figuring out where an artist has been, you look at their bio, because that shows you what they've done for the last X amount of years. And then you research each one of those things and figure out, is this him talking, or is this other people sort of saying, yes, he's got something of value to say to culture itself.
Yeah, waiho te tangata koe mihi. It's that whole e kore te kumare e kōrero mo tōna ke reka. You're not there to pump yourself up. But if other people are talking about you and saying, hey, actually, what she's creating is amazing, you know, like, you know, it's that kind of external mihi, I guess, rather than are they just doing a mihi to themselves?
Yeah, that's right. So I've, you know, like, I don't mean to sort of blow my own horn or anything, but again, like, you know, I've got some public sculptures out there. I've done some exhibitions, you know, and all of this stuff. But if you look into those projects, and if you look into those exhibitions, you know, it's these people that have given me those opportunities because they see that what I'm trying to say in my work has long-lasting sort of, you know, impacts. My work is not just going to sit there and look pretty. What I'm sort of bringing up and talking about in my work is we're still going to be sort of talking about it for the next 10 years. You know, when you you know, sort of look at toi ora, and you know, I'm in there, you see my mahi in there, you know, some of the kōrero that I'm talking about, like Whakapī, you know, it's almost like it's almost like a setting up a whole art movement in itself. And so if people buy into my ideas of around Whakapī and how to navigate or want to navigate in this digital space, then, you know, you sort of think about Cubism, who started that, and you'll think of someone. You think about pop art, you sort of think about someone, and it's sort of those types of, and I'm not putting myself up there at all.
No, but that's what you think about. That's what
those types of notions and connotations that it gives. So, you know, Picasso, the father of Cubism. You think of Andy Warhol, he's the father of pop art. You know, so when you sort of think about those art movements, and you're thinking about these moments in time and moments in culture and moments in history, especially in an art context of art history, you know, a lot of the people within that book, they're going to learn about them. They're going to learn about these people in that context, or in that way, or in a similar context or a similar way, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, because it's recorded in history in a particular way. Now, this is sort of where it gets a little bit interesting, because this is a system, and it's a system that is a central system. And this is, you know,
things like that.
It is there's lots of elitism, lots of, you know, snobbery, and I don't sort of like that myself. But it is what it is, you know. So as an artist, like, if you want to sort of navigate that space or go into that space, that's something to sort of be mindful of and be aware of, is that it may not fit true to you. So then, you know, find other ways.
And I guess well, NFTs and things like that. Like because I see like the art world and I can see that kind of gatekeepy aspect of it. It's only cool if we say it's cool. You know, that really controls a lot of it. But I guess like what blockchain does, like what the internet does, is it actually like, so before the news used to be only what the news says is
Yeah.
important. Now social media, we say what's important, and you know, we tell that story. It's like, you know, with my work specifically, something that is underpinning everything I do with my mahitoe, with my photography, is, you know, for ages the news, and they were like the trendsetter, the tastemaker. They were saying sick Māori, sad Māori, bad Māori, unemployed Māori,
Yeah.
stealing Māori, violent Māori, all of that sort of thing. That's the message that's going out there. Those are the only messages getting through. But then social media, man, like it's my mission to show talented Māori, loving Māori, caring Māori, genius Māori, you know, successful Māori, all of these sorts of things. And,
Flip
you
that
know,
quarter away.
yeah, well, and it's again, it's taking the power, it's decentralizing the power. And
Yeah.
so I can also see that happening with blockchain, with the art world, because for years the art world has been controlled by, you know, certain groups of people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't look at the history of an artist, like, because I do, you know, and I look at, you know, where have they come from, where they're going. If I'm going to invest in an art piece, like I invested in yours, I know you're not going to disappear tomorrow. I know you're going to keep pushing boundaries in the space. I know you're going to keep creating work. So I know in 10 years, those pieces that I have of yours, I believe they will be very valuable, you know, and I hope to provide the same value for the people that buy my works. I'm not going to stop doing this tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and when you talk about it, you know, like I'm going to be taking our exhibition into Te Papa. We've had it at Waitangi, so we're still kind of ticking those boxes, but that's not the only way now, because we have decentralized, and that's what's exciting about NFTs is you could find someone that has no track record, that has no history, but they're telling a real compelling story, or they've got, you know, really powerful art, and that person could just go viral because they are compelling, because they are powerful, and that flips that whole, oh, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to get a residency, and you have to get an exhibition. You can flip that whole thing on its head, which is like exciting as well. So it's now like what I can see and what I'm hearing in your korero is that you have to look at both. Yeah, we're in that transition time where you have to look at both, where you have to go. I mean, I still do. I look at artists. Same with investing in Mr. G's work. One, because I think he's an awesome dude. Like as a person, his choice, his art is epic. I'm like,
Amazing as
so lucky to have this piece behind me. But I also believe, you know, I look back, okay, sweet. He's been working at this for 18 years. He's been telling stories for 18 years. He's been creating for 18 years. He's going to keep going. So I know, you know, or I can trust that it's that sort of thing, you know, going forward. Ka whai hua, you know, not that I want to sell his work, but you know, because I'm also buying because I love it, you know. I'm not just buying it because one day it might get me lots of money. Same as your, you know, your work. I actually like it. It's cool. I like looking at it. I like the story that it tells. You know, and so I think, you know, for our whānau, you know, look at it on all of those levels. Don't just look at it like, is this going to make me money? You know, and I think there's a lot of that kind of greed that has come into the NFT space, definitely, with a lot of the PFP projects, but also a lot of the art stuff. It's like, oh, I can make thousands of dollars just through selling this, you know. So that's there, and you can do that. And if you want to invest in that, then sweet, that's cool. That's up to you. But like, here's some other things to think about. One, who is the artist? You know, what are they talking about? Where have they come from, and where are they going? Like, those are all things that should, you know, at least cross your mind when you're looking at something. Especially if you're going to put your hard-earned money in there, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting though is that I'd say that the only reason we're having this discussion right now is because of this system. And what happened in February 2021 was the Beeple sale. that was through an auction house called Christie's.
Yeah.
And that auction house sells work by Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
It sells artwork by Basquiat. It sells
All of those big names.
It sells all of those big cultural names. Now, if you in 10 years look at there's these art books called Tashin, and
How do you spell it?
Taschen. Now, if you go look, so they do art history type books, right?
Yeah.
And they pick out really important kaupapa within the art world. But they also do large sweeping historical views as well. Now, the interesting thing is that if you look at some of those historical art books, you're going to see that. You're going to see Andy Warhol, the father of pop art.
Yeah.
You're going to see, whoever as the head of, or the inventor, or the father of that, art.
Or the mother.
Or the mother. Yeah, aroha mai.
But generally, it's a male-dominated space as well.
To be honest,
so that's another thing that we need to flip.
Yep. So to be honest, it pretty much is all full of males. There are some females though, which is awesome. In 20 years' time, when you look back in art history, when one of those books, you're going to see Beeple as the father of NFT art, and potentially, I don't think so, but potentially digital art. When I was in New York about 4 years ago, I went to a digital art exhibition. And what I was completely blown away by was all of that art was from the 70s.
Wow.
That just went. So here I was thinking, I was like, yeah, man, I've been
futuristic
and ages and, And then the 70s, they were making digital art. A lot of it was physical. And there are some problems with digital art. And this is what the NFT and the metaverse space sort of looks at, making easier in terms of accessibility. Like I've had people approach me to do digital artworks, but how is that stored? Like I made this game a few years ago now, and the game was an appropriation of the game Space Invaders.
Yeah.
And that in itself should say, you should already know what I'm going to talk about. So the name of this game is Space Invaders. I called it A Very Brief History of Aotearoa.
Yeah.
I had the
One
whare.
ship comes and then two ships come.
Yeah. So I had the whare. I had the whare as the ship down the bottom.
Yeah.
That's the character that you play, the defender. And then there's 3 levels. So the first level is crikey. It's the mitre, which is the Pope's hat. So when the missionaries came over, ceilings and but it's the coming of the religion. Then the 3rd level is the crown. So there's lots of crowns that you sort of got to get through. So it sort of signals the signing of the treaty. And then there's the beehive at the end. And then you kill them all off, and then the beehive comes down again and down again and down again. And it's just, you keep playing the same level of the beehive over and over and over and over and over. And you can't win.
To our story. Yeah.
You can't win. You can't beat it. So this artwork, it actually existed pre that big. So I did some big sculptures outside Te Papa, and there was 4 sculptures, 2 meters tall or something, of all of these separate characters. There's a big QR code. You scan the QR code and it takes you to the game that you can play. But it sort of tells you about that that really loose, quick history of our thing. But sort of going through and playing this game, and I've totally forgotten where I was taking this. So I'll sort of segue into another. Another kudu. But anyway, sort of looking at digital tech, I think the interesting thing is that when you think about the internet and when you think about the birth of the internet, like where it comes from, there's some interesting things. Like I said, it's interesting how, because NFTs were sort of around, I think 2017, 2018. That's sort of when they first came on the scene.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
It's been a little while, but then it wasn't because of the Beeple sale.
It wasn't mass adopted. That's the
Yeah.
difference. The technology was there, just like AR was there, but it wasn't mass adopted
Yeah.
until, you know.
Yeah. VR. I remember putting on some virtual reality goggles in about '88 in Auckland at an arcade.
Wicked.
Yeah, and the graphics were absolute rubbish. But
Yeah,
back in the '80s, I put some goggles on.
yeah,
But what I really love about the online space, so it carries across. Like you've heard me talk about auctions, and you've heard me talk about the secondary market and things like that.
which is what we see in the NFT world as well.
Exactly. They're following. Yep, they're sort of following the same process, and they're following the same sort of, as you navigate through. And as an artist, sort of what you're looking for is who are the gatekeepers in the real world, in the digital world. Then, like who operates these spaces, who are the major players within these spaces. So obviously, as an artist, you're seeing sort of people rise up.
Yeah.
But then there's some other people around that who actually organize the metaverse, who run the metaverse, who organize these, like who's the owner of OpenSea,
Yeah.
If you had a
and what art are they pushing to the front?
Yeah. So all of these spaces, that's sort of what you got to sort of really be mindful of, is when we're entering into these spaces, who are they and what are their kaupapa? There are some cool projects that I've heard of where Māori are creating their own platforms. So I think, as soon as that starts happening, I'm probably gonna jump over and start.
That's where we'll jump on.
Yeah, that's where we'll jump on. I don't have the time or the energy to create my own platform, but there's two people that I know of that are creating their own platforms for Māori that are sort of, kaupapa Māori led.
It's exciting.
It's just really awesome. But what I really love about the online spaces is going back to the birth of the internet. How it all works is like through HTML and stuff like that. If you sort of cast your mind back to that movie Tron from 70s or 80s, it sort of talks about sort of what we're about to enter into, this utopia. So they're trying to create this perfect world where it's all open and free access and all of that stuff. And when you think about those ideologies, you're thinking about the complete opposite of governments, control, systems. And when you're thinking about, especially for Māori who have been, controlled, then, that's sort of why I've been looking into this online space, is because it could be an opportunity for us to finally break free of some of that stuff. So where the internet comes from itself, it's a little bit of a contradiction in itself, because it was sort of for the army and stuff.
Military,
military. But there was a guy, Tim Berners-Lee, who created this language which enabled him to communicate a lot easier through computers, through different people in different countries, and that was called HTML, which is how the internet, it's the language that the internet works. But what he did is I think it was funded by the government, but then he turned around, he owns the IP, but he just gave it to the world for free. The internet is built on, it's built on open source philosophy, which sort of has its roots in another movement prior to that. But when you're thinking about open source technologies and decentralization, I mean, it just aligns with kaupapa Māori so well too. That's the opportunity, and that's a potential opportunity and a potential space for us to sort of start thinking about it. So again, at a really deeper level, what I'm sort of looking at is culture, digital culture, and the alignment of those two things. There's a nice sync. There's a nice sync there, eh?
And it's a good thing for us to really like look at, and for for all of us to look at. So
Yeah.
where to next for you, like in your journey, for to wrap up our kōrero? We've talked about where you've come from, and then the kind of wānanga, or the things that you are thinking about, that I'm thinking about, that we're thinking
Mm.
about in this space. But like, to round off our wānanga, like where do you reckon this is all going, or where do you reckon you're going in this space?
Um, I'm sort of like Maui. Yeah, I've got a foot in two doors. So I am represented by a gallery, but at the same time, because my work is based on this space, I still need to explore this space.
Hmm.
And so, throwing up some, I started putting up some NFTs last year.
And I got the number one.
Yeah, kia ora to the tātou, good brother. And I'll continue to explore this space. I haven't, I was on Second Life like years ago, so it'll be interesting to go into the metaverse and see how it sort of works, functions, operates, what happens, what sort of falls out of it. So in terms of a kaupapa driven, it'll still be the same for me, exploring different digital technologies and opportunities for us to enter into, creating space for our rangatahi, so that we do the hard yards. If we do the hard yards, it just means it's easier for the next gen to come in. So if we can figure all of this stuff out, I think we've spoken about whakapapa, so we've got a connection to the space, but now we've still got work to do in terms of who's behind that mask, figuring out the best way to operate and navigate. I've dropped some stuff in here as well about that, but it's just going to be continuing. So in a deeper, biggest, largest context, that's what I'll be doing in the future. But also coming up, got a solo exhibition down south.
Whereabouts down south, so the whānau down there can go and see it?
Milford Galleries, Queenstown.
Cool.
And then got a local show that I'm a part of. So the if you go to my known origin, if you look at that first mahi Kamua Kamuri in the Ao collection, that's being projected up in town on a large scale.
Tauranga town.
Yeah, in Tauranga. I'm not sure if I was supposed to share that. I might get in trouble. I don't know. And then you didn't hear that. And then I'm heading over to Turtle Island again. Got another big projection project over in Toronto, on the CN Tower, the big massive tower in the middle of the city. So that's sort of the short term. That's what I'll be doing for the rest of the year, and got a couple of potential shows sort of lined up for next year too. So that'll be me between teaching, just chipping away at those projects.
That's wicked. Oh well, I just really want to mihi to you. This has been an awesome ruku, and we've chewed up 2 hours just like that.
Yeah.
That's it, bro. And just to kind of recap, so looking at the atua, and how we can see because our atua, they reflect qualities or concepts or values and stuff like that we see in our world. So that's something that I've been really keen to go into with regard to this metaverse, with regard to the blockchain and cryptocurrency, all of those sorts of things, to see, how do we see ourselves in this space? How do we see ourselves and our culture reflected in this space? So it's not just this foreign, if you look online, you're only going to see Americans or European people talking about blockchain, talking about, metaverse and things like that. How can we start to see ourselves in that, but also our culture? And so, really want to mihi too for that, and for reminding us to look at a little bit deeper. What is the message? What are we trying to communicate with our art? Are we just doing it for the likes? Are we just doing it because it looks cool, or are we doing it because we're, you know, trying to communicate something? And I think that's something choice for any of us to look at as artists, eh? Yeah.
Hard, bro. Hard.
Last words, bro?
Oh, I just, you know, big mihi to you, bro. Like, you know, to have, you know, a wānanga online, like, man, this is so awesome. And I've
It's
been
cool.
sort of waiting for years for this type of stuff. You know, I'm sick of, I don't like reading. I hate reading. I'd rather watch kōrero
listen.
between people and listen. And yeah, so big mihi to you, bro.
Yeah, bro.
And all of the, you know, the guests that have come on prior. Yeah, and bro, big me to, you know, get me on too for whatever it's worth.
No, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, hopefully some artists out there have got a, you know, a little bit of you know, some gems in there, and hope potentially some investors who are looking at investing in NFTs and stuff have gotten a little bit out of this as well. But yeah, I'm just super humble, grateful. Thank you, bro. It's been awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. And big mihi to all of our whānau who have stuck through with us for the 2 hours. Mean. Big ups to all of you over on the Twitch space and Facebook land and YouTube and over on Twitter as well. So mihi kawana kia tātou katoa. Ka whakairi hea ki ngā kaupapa kōrero ki te tāhuhu o tō tātou whare. Hei tiki atu mā tātou a tōna wā. E mihi ana. So yeah, no, really massively grateful to everyone for joining us tonight and for the many that will join us later on. I see a sleepy face over here. Tēnā koe manaki. Yeah, time for sleep. Yeah, tuakana te kanapu. Toitu te tākoha toitu. So long live NFTs. So you know, in looking at how we engage with this space, te kanapu and I and some others have been looking at, you know, how ngā kupu hanga ana ki tēnei ao, what's the language, and we're using takoha toitu as a name for NFTs because he takoha, it's something that you can give, you can trade, and toitu once it's written on the blockchain, toitu, it will be it'll stay there for ages, but it's also ka toitu te hononga ki a koe. If I create a piece and it gets sold and it gets on-sold on the secondary market and things like that. With a normal art piece, physical art piece, if I sold it, after it's gone, you know, I don't see anything else from that. But with NFTs, you know, once it's gone through, then I'll be able to receive those royalties. My kids will be able to receive the royalties after I'm gone. So ka toitu te rā hononga, I wainganui i a koe me tō toi. So yeah, massive kōrero. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next wānanga. Mauri ora, brother.